Welcome to the CrackBerry.com podcast, episode 091 for October the 11th, 2012. And now here's CrackBerry's Energizer Bunny, Kevin. CrackBerry.com.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Craig. It's Kevin here, founder of CrackBerry.com. And it's been a long time since we've done a show, so we have a full house for this one. Joining us today, we have the Adam Zeiss.
The BlackBerry.
Author of Randomness and Goodness. You can buy it on Amazon.com for 99 cents, free if you're a Prime member.
Do it, support my family.
Blaze, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here with my apple soda.
Where's the Red Bull and cigarettes?
I'm not allowed to smoke in the house.
Should quit. Craig, the man with the voice, you're here.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. I've missed you guys the last few episodes, so it's great to be back.
It feels like it's been forever, so it's extra special to have you. And we love what's sitting in your background there, even though it's not a BlackBerry product. We'll forgive you because it's an arcade, which is wicked.
Arcade, we need to get them to make a playbook version.
Could be a little. We could Kickstarter that thing. Do it ourselves.
That's right.
Craig Yumi. Sorry, Craig Yumi. Ha.
Hey guys.
I was still
been a while. Good to do this show. Last time we did it, I think I was sitting out on my patio in the sun. Now it's like 8 degrees and freezing. Yeah. And I got the fireplace on.
The pure.
You come to my place, man. I got a pool in my backyard.
And finally, rounding out the show, guest number 6. Special guest, Renee Ritchie, editor-in-chief of imore.com, the grand poobah of all things iOS. We wanted to have you on the show for 2 reasons. One, because the iPhone 5 just came out. We'll probably talk about it later on. And I know a couple of us picked them up on the Crack team, so we're using them and we have things to say. And more importantly, because 5 of us here would just look random. So this way you fill us in nicely. You complete us, Renee.
And I'm Canadian, like Rim, so it restores balance to the show.
There you go.
I really think we should have had like a block for Kevin and a block for Kevin's hair, and then we still would have had 6.
Yeah, so the hair has joined us. That's really the 7th member of the show today. These beautiful locks.
Did you nickname it yet?
So Fabio.
Video viewers. I really love having long hair, guys. It's, before I was going to cut it when BB10 came out, but now I think I might just keep it forever.
Hotter than a Vindaloo.
Haircut, you hippie.
It's true. And what's funny is I've had to resort to wearing like bobby pins to keep it out of my face while I work. And it's really, I wear it in public. So when we were at BlackBerry Jam 2 weeks ago there, I kept tossing in like that. And when you're talking to people, they don't notice it at first. But when they see you're wearing a pin in your hair, it makes them really uncomfortable. And they just, you see their eyes keep darting to this little thing in your hair. And it's really interesting. But call me Berry Locks or Goldilocks or whatever you like. But that is the hair. And that's the last I'm going to talk about at this show unless you bring it up.
Or unless someone buys one of the romance novels that you're on the cover of now.
That's my plan B career, if tech blogging ever goes to hell.
Hopefully you have a plan C too then.
I believe tech blogging has just gone to hell talking about your hair.
It's crazy. Okay, let's get right to it.
In the chat, I'm calling you a weirdo, so I don't know how you feel about that.
Totally fine. I mean,
He's long-haired by choice.
I'm long-haired by choice. Shameless. Shame is something I don't feel, I guess. I think if you looked up shameless in the dictionary, I would probably be there. Oh no, look, he says it's all love now. See, I'm a weirdo in a good way. No, let's talk BlackBerry stuff though. Lots to cover today. So we're going to talk BlackBerry Jam Americas, which 3 of the 6 of us were at. We're going to talk earnings. RIM just had their Q1 2013 earnings. So Yumi, you're going to give us a little lowdown on that.
Yep.
We have a lot of hardware stuff happening. So we've had some leaks of what, the first BlackBerry 10 phone with a keyboard's going to look like, and even the second touchscreen phone. We have some specs on that to discuss. We've got, obviously, our new hands-on time spent with the Dev Alpha B. We've got Craig. We want to talk a little bit more about BlackBerry Balance. Yesterday, Rim's, well, she used to be, I guess, the CIO, Robin, how do you say it? Benefit? I can never pronounce her name right. Benefit. She was on stage at CTIA, now called Mobile Con or something like that. And they showed up BlackBerry Balance. And it was funny because even Phil Nickinson, our Android guy, was like, that Balance stuff looks awesome on BlackBerry 10. So, something for us to talk about. So a lot of stuff. Let's get into it with BB Jam wrap-up. And I think, Adam, you wrote a great piece under the Zeiss lens. Give us your take on BB Jam.
Overall, I mean, it was pretty exciting. If you remember last year, we went to DevCon when it was still in San Francisco, and I think after the fact, I think we did the podcast after, but I don't remember. But we were just kind of, a little down in the dumps because there wasn't a whole lot going on, and it just seemed, like there was kind of a lack of people around. But this year, they moved it to San Jose, and it was the total opposite. I mean, I think right from the start when we got there, we were like super pumped up. And the venue change was different, so it's not so spread out because the Marriott or wherever in San Francisco, is this huge span. So it's kind of like everybody's all over the place all the time. But here, it was kind of one giant room that everyone was in. But just right from the get-go, I mean, from the keynote straight through, there's just developers all over the place that were super excited. And we talked to a bunch of people. And just the whole vibe in general, I think, was a lot of fun. Guys were learning cascades and all kinds of stuff with the cards and just how to do different things in the OS and everything. And we got to look at the browser and the fact that the browser is built in WebWorks. So it's a browser and browser. And it was like, but, just all kinds of fun stuff, like developer oriented stuff. But it was the first time, more or less, that we got, like a huge healthy heap of BlackBerry 10. And then we got to play around with the Dev Alpha B, which is the kind of like a revamped Dev Alpha, but it actually has like BlackBerry 10 software on it, so you could play around with the different views, and you can see the hub even though it doesn't work yet. So, all in all, I mean, it was just, I think, a super experience.
BBM too. Woo.
Yeah,
well, I think that was one thing we were all surprised at, was how much we got to see a BlackBerry 10. I mean, I think we all came into it expecting to see them show off maybe some canned demos, kind of like they did at BlackBerry World, where they showed us the keyboard and the camera and everything. But the bottom line is they needed to get the developer tools into the hands of developers. And they are API complete now, which meant having to show off BBM and the hub, the preview of the hub and how the UI fully works and put that into the hands of people. So really, we're kind of walking around with, more than half-baked BlackBerry 10 Dev Alphas now, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, Blaze, you played with
they're
yours
definitely
a lot.
more than half baked right now. There's still a lot more that isn't necessarily built directly into these devices that they stripped out of it, but they're pretty awesome as it is. Like when you play around with the operating system, like BBM, even App World, even the browser, everything just totally responds the way that you would expect a brand new operating system to. And overall, it's fun to play with. But yeah, there's plenty more where this came from. There's so much more that RIM hasn't even showed off yet. You can't even really, when you look at the BlackBerry Dev Alpha device and what you have in your hands and what you see on the videos and all that, screenshots, whatever the case may be, there's so much more that they took out of it that we can't even see yet. But like all things, we have to wait until RIM is actually ready to go ahead and show that to us.
Is that a good I mean, you see Apple and Google basically come out now. They show, this is our next version of our OS. They show you everything and they leave the stage. But RIM and Microsoft are both being very cagey about their next generation software.
Well, maybe RIM and Microsoft are both finishing their next generation software. They're building the airplane as they're flying it, so to speak. Could be the difference there. I think there are still finishing touches happening in BlackBerry 10 that you're going to see over the next couple of months. I mean, I think the hard work is done. The plumbing's all been laid out. And now it's a matter of just kind of on an app by app basis, filling up the OS and making sure every app has some of those delightful experiences that users want to see and expect.
Right. Like even this morning, like they're accepting BlackBerry 10 applications right now. So I was playing around with the Dev Alpha this morning, and I realized that they're actually pushing some of those updates into the Dev Alpha BlackBerry app world. And I was going through and checking out how the actual update process went, and it's just everything is so much more smoother. Even when you compare it to, like, say, the BlackBerry Playbook, the whole process of just simply updating an application seems a whole hell of a lot better. So they've gone ahead and polished a lot of what you're seeing on here to a certain point. But like I said, they're still building stuff as they're going, and we're going to see a lot more of it by the time launch date actually comes out. Although I hesitate to say when that launch date would actually be.
Well, we'll talk launch dates a little later. You just jogged my memory blaze of possibly one of the craziest things I learned at BB Jam, which is RIM in architecting the OS. And I guess knowing that, RIM works with lots of carriers can have lots of demands, etc. And you don't want to get bogged down with details when you're trying to hustle at the pace that these mobile companies have to do. You can literally install everything on BlackBerry 10 out of App World if you needed to. Like literally, you could go, RIM could ship the phone with just App World on the home screen. And once you opened it up, you could install every native app out of App World if you had to. Like, let's say a carrier out there said, we don't want you to ship the phone with native email. Let's just say that. It's crazy, of course. You could literally, if RIM needed to, they could like package it up.
Well, they've done it before.
You could download it, it'll install, and it'll be 100% perfect. Any app you want, which is kind of cool. I don't know. I thought that was neat. No comment? Craig, that's cool, right?
I don't know. Is it?
I think it's great.
I think it's smart.
You can't hide stuff. The iPhone, they don't let you hide native apps because they're afraid, like, your grandmother will do it and she'll never be able to get it back. But if you can go to the store and get it, you can suddenly get rid of all those useless stocks or no news shelf apps that you don't want.
Well, I think they're gonna lock it down so like everything native will be pre-installed. It won't be in there in App World to like delete it or something like that. But it was more so the plan B, right? If a carrier said, hey, we don't want your mapping application that's native. In the past, they would have to really change they'd have to rewrite a version of the OS for that carrier and lock it down with all the different service books, what's showing and isn't showing. And now they can control it much easier, right? They could just remove it from what ships with a click, and then they could, end user could still get back whatever they want if it was missing, which is nice.
That's what you're saying, Kevin. Yeah, that is good.
RIM figuring it out, the 10 years of selling phones. I think you're starting to see it all come together here.
So one question I have, and maybe this information is out there and I just haven't seen it, but what is going to happen to the monthly fee that we get charged when we use a BlackBerry today when we go to BlackBerry 10? Do we still have to go through the BIS to get email and stuff like that? Or has anybody got a feeling of what's going to happen to that?
I think it's straight up just smartphone plan. Like that's the Dev Alpha, at least. I just have a regular micro SIM in there with a smartphone plan. But I'm pretty sure, I think somebody asked that in the forums the other day if you need like the biz plan or whatever. But I don't know that you need the individual BlackBerry plan from here on out. I think it's just a regular smartphone plan.
I think RIM is going to want to try to make you need a plan so they can keep their $1 billion in service revenue. Yumi, what's your take? I know you've been looking into this question.
Yeah, this is. This comes down to the real issues that RIM is facing right now because they. So first of all, they're not making money on their hardware business, right? They're losing money on hardware sales, and they need to reverse that when they launch BlackBerry 10, because obviously, they're selling these BlackBerry 7 devices at price points that are below profitability and stuff like that. Then the next potential risk facing them is the service revenue. So they're doing about $1 billion a quarter in revenue. It's very high margin revenue, and it's all related to that SAF, the system access fee, or SAF, as a lot of the industry insiders call it, right? So that is essentially due to the portion of the fee that we all pay as consumers that goes to RIM through our bill, goes to RIM. And if that goes away, mean, then how are they going to replace that revenue? So that's a real good question. And so based on what Adam is saying, he's using the Dev Alpha. You just got a micro SIM in there, and you just have a regular smartphone plan. Yeah, I mean, what's RIM charging for exactly? Because they're using ActiveSync. Nothing has to go through the NOC anymore, as far as I can tell. And if it doesn't have to, then you could avoid paying fees to RIM. But it's possible that some of their applications, like BBM, are going to require a BlackBerry specific plan. In which case, are people still going to use them, or are they going to say, "Hey, I want a free version"?
Well, but we have BBM working on the Dev Alpha.
On the Dev Alpha B, you have BBM, right? Was I correct in hearing that? So how does it work today without a BlackBerry?
Let's talk about that.
Well, BBM works now on the Dev Alpha, but even stuff like you look at, I think it was T-Mobile the other day announced that they're going to do BBM as part of the unlimited text package. So it's not, so if you don't have a BlackBerry data plan, but you're using a BlackBerry, like a lot of people do, and they just use it on Wi-Fi or just for voice and messaging, like the BBM is going to be included in the unlimited text plan. So then, how does that work? Is that like a BlackBerry feature or what? But I think that the BBM will just go through the way it does now, like on the Dev Alpha, just straight through the smartphone plan as well.
So I think another
how is RIM more?
Keep in mind
how are they charging?
In a lot of the third world countries, BlackBerries are very popular because there's a sort of low monthly fee that people pay, and then they can have unlimited access to the internet and BBM and all of that kind of stuff. And that will essentially go away when people want to then move to BlackBerry 10. So their BlackBerries may become more expensive on a monthly basis than they are today. What do you think, Chris?
I think that's something that we all need to get a lot of clarity on. There's a lot of unknowns here. It sounds to me like you can just buy a smartphone plan or buy a SIM that has a data plan attached to it and stick it in your phone and use it. And if that's the case, I don't understand how RIM is getting any revenue in terms of the service. So there's got to be some plan that they have. I don't think they've really communicated the architecture.
I'm reading Tron in the comments right now. Says, go back and watch Kevin's interview with Michael Cluley, where possibly we addressed this in the past, but I don't think we did, though. I mean, we know about ActiveSync protocol and how that's being used.
I think we talked about it a little bit because I think that was CES.
I'm ticked off because we should have just asked this question 2 weeks ago when we had a few hundred RIM people around, and we probably could have got an answer immediately. The one thing I want to say, though, is, we know the first two devices that are launching are kind of high-end, top-tier phones, and they're going to be on a full data plan. But RIM's been really clear about, BlackBerry 10 is going to proliferate the product portfolio. And I think a big part of that is having these sort of, when they talk about the mid-tier markets or the lower end side of the market, a big part of that strategy is low-cost device and these segmented data plans, sorry. And I think that they're going to have that working so they can still say, okay, you can only access this or that or that. But maybe not at launch. Maybe that's coming later as they work out that infrastructure. But they've been not vocal about it, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Also, Kevin, I was thinking, the Dev Alpha, it's possible that whatever provisioning elements that they're going to have, they don't have in place yet. And they could still be planning on putting them there. And it's just that they haven't done it for the Dev Alpha because there's no point, or they don't have the connectivity through the NOC working fully yet, as has been rumored. So it's entirely possible that all of this is going to change by the time they launch.
Well, that's not really comforting. They should really know exactly what they're doing.
Well, they know. I'm sure they know. We just don't know, right? But yeah, you're right. If you guys had asked
we attended, I think it was CES. We asked a similar question. And the answer was that the BlackBerry 10 and the Playbook will support ActiveSync, as we know, right? It'll support ActiveSync. But then there's going to be this extra stuff that you can pay extra for, where they'll be forcing the data to go through the NOC and to the BlackBerry Fusion server or the new bears at your company. But that would be a choice. You'd have to make that choice. You wouldn't be forced to do it. So we'd have to see if companies will opt in for that, and they feel that it's much safer to do it that way as opposed to just letting it go out in the wild like an iPhone and an Android phone. So we'll have to see. I think that was their answer to us, is that would be an option.
That sounds familiar. So this is a good point to bring up the enterprise side of or a good time to bring up the enterprise side of things, Craig. So with with the non-BlackBerry devices you manage today, you're using Mobile Iron, or which packages are you using? Which companies are you dealing with?
Yeah, so I mean, I work for NTT Data, and it's a large consulting company, so we actually have to really get to know all of them. So the big players on the mobile device management side are Mobile Iron and AirWatch and Boxstone, some of these guys. But then there's a new segment starting up, which is very much like BlackBerry Balance, what I was going to say later is BlackBerry Balance is a really good idea. And that's the idea that the device is segmented into two parts, the personal side and the work side. And so there are companies in that space today. One is called Enterproid, and their product's called Divide, where the device is literally one's a container with the work stuff in it. Good Technology does it too. There's a company called OpenPeak. So there's a few plays in that space. So those are the ones that we typically work with. And dual persona, which is what BlackBerry Balance is becoming very, very, very popular. And I'll tell you why. It's because most companies are adopting bring your own device. And that essentially means you pay for the phone yourself. It's up to you to buy the phone. And then the company may give you a stipend every month. They might give you back for the data you're using or the voice or whatever. But essentially, it's your device. So with the traditional MDM approach, which is not much like a BEARS, where the IT has full control over the device. If that's in place, then you're forced to comply with all these different rules, which is you have to have a password on your device to unlock it, and who wants that anyway, right? And we know it's secure, but people hate that. All kinds of restrictions. So dual persona is much more popular because the users now who are being forced to pay for their own phones don't feel that they're getting screwed over by the company, and their device is really still their own. So those are the ones we play with, and that's why BlackBerry Balance, I think, has a great future.
And then in terms of now to get the balance features, though, you're going to have to be using the BES 10 package, right? So then, my other question about service fees comes back to, okay, so if you want to use balance, you're going to have that BlackBerry data plan where RIM should get service revenue. But then
I'm not sure about that, Kevin.
No?
I think that they're going to charge for the server, the Mobile Fusion server, separately, and it won't be a part of the data plan anymore. I think it's going to be something the enterprise pays for directly as a cow on the server.
So looking at RIM's financials there, Yumi, how much revenue and profit is at risk if that starts to go away from RIM the way it's done today?
This is a hard one to say because I don't know how many of the $1 billion are coming from enterprise users. And as we know, historically, so let's just back up and go through the history of RIM here really quickly. They started getting these subscribers essentially almost all in the enterprise. And people were connecting through the BES, and people were paying a high ARPU or the ARPU, the feed, the monthly feed that RIM got per month from its subscribers was somewhere in the $7 to $10 per month in the United States. And then as it permeated through the consumer market, they were getting something more like, say, $2 from subscribers in Indonesia. And that's why the ARPU kept dropping as a dollar amount per month, but the overall dollars kept rising because they kept getting more and more subscribers. And so they've got a lot of people paying low ARPU, like maybe $2, $3, $4 a month. And that's the consumer stuff that is at risk. How much of the $1 billion a month is coming from the consumer, I'm not sure, versus how much of it is coming from people in enterprise who are connected to a BES where, yes, it could disappear, but be replaced with Mobile Fusion. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know what the answer is the long and short of it, but there definitely is $1 billion of service revenue that is at risk of declining to what, I don't know. But I think it's definitely at risk of declining here. And that's a big concern to me.
And I'm trying to think back if that question came up on the last earnings call from one of the analysts at the end or not, or if it's been asked on a previous quarter and we're just forgetting the reasons or the answer to it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the details of what was asked exactly. I mean, Torsten's been pretty clear in saying we're facing pressure on that fee, but I don't think that he's been specific over what time frame or exactly where's the pressure coming from. Is it? I think the real pressure is coming from the enterprise from the consumer, because that's the one that doesn't necessarily get replaced with a Mobile Fusion fee. Whereas the the enterprise guys, it just goes from being me paying it as part of my monthly bill to my enterprise paying it on my behalf.
So it's interesting. I was going to blame us for being a little rusty on this show, but the more we talk about this, the more I realize I think RIM just hasn't fully told this story to the extent they need to soon.
Yeah, they have not. Yeah.
I think another thing.
I don't think they want to tell the story yet.
So one other thing you guys have to bear in mind, though, is that BlackBerry has always said that they have great compression. And we all know that they do, right? And that's because they've built a system with a server on the one side and a device on the other side, and they're using proprietary mechanism to get data back and forth, so they can compress it. It's like the emails and things like that. But once you take away the NOC, there's no way to do compression because you're now talking to public servers, and you can't go to Google and say, hey, you need to compress your data. They're just not going to do that. So the compression aspect will go away, and I think that might make carriers a little bit unhappy. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I wouldn't assume that. I think that if the fee goes away, if the fee goes away for consumers, that doesn't mean that RIM isn't driving traffic through its own NOC and doing compression. It just means that they're not charging for it, right? If the fee goes away, it means they're not charging for it. It doesn't mean they're not doing it.
Well, the thing is, the
compression side of things. Here, hang on. Sorry, Craig. The compression side of things, though, doesn't apply to all data, though, right? It's like RIM could compress text data and things really well, but if you're already sending compressed formats like MPEGs and stuff over the air, aren't they already compressed, or could RIM?
Exactly.
I don't think RIM could further compress them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've talked to them about that in the past, and that's absolutely true. There's really no way you can't take a zip file and compress it more than it's already compressed, or a JPEG or an MPEG-4 or whatever it is.
Yeah, and these
that
days
was my argument years ago. As we move more
multimedia things.
Yeah, you move more to a multimedia world, and what does it matter? It's compression is already done.
The NOC doesn't do compression. Actually, you can think of the NOC as just a big relay. It just relays data, but the compression is actually done on the device and on the BlackBerry server itself, the bears or the BIS. That's where the compression takes place. So the NOC really doesn't do that compression at all. But as you said, Kevin, it's becoming less, less important because you can really only compress text emails really well. You can't really compress video and pictures and those kinds of things.
That's something, Kev, we talked about that a while, maybe 2 years ago, saying that when you move from dial-up to broadband, suddenly compression isn't the value that it used to be.
Yeah, unless, data apocalypse truly happens the way Mike Lazaridis predicted on stage at MWC 3 years ago. But
it happens when you get LTE and you go through 6 gigs in a week.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm thinking back to that interview in January. I'm reading through some of the chat roll comments here, and I remember Michael Cluley saying that part of the role of the NOC still in the biz servers wasn't necessarily on that data transfer side of things because they are using ActiveSync for email or the protocol, but in terms of setup, they were using it. So when you're adding email addresses, the back end on RIM side is doing the configuration and lifting and that kind of thing. It's not that the end user has to punch in all these settings that you do on some of the other platforms when setting up email accounts. So They're still going to work in, they're going to work in that component, but I don't know what you can charge per month for that type of component.
You can't really charge for that kind of thing. And I also noticed a comment in there, which is valid, that the NOC or the infrastructure, however you want to consider it, is responsible for doing things like resizing JPEGs and all that, because you don't need to send an entire high-res JPEG if you're just displaying it on a low-res screen or whatever. So there are some elements of compression that are going to happen there.
We have high DPI screens on mobile before we have them on computers now. Almost every device I have that's mobile has 300 around pixels per inch, and very few computers can do that. I think mobile getting better quality images now.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that advantage that used to exist is starting to become less relevant. So big question. I don't know. How are we going to get answers to this about what RIM strategy is on service revenue?
Yeah, I think we should move on to another topic. But the takeaway for all of us here is, we have some homework to do for our next show because there's a lot of interesting questions.
We're putting Kevin back on a plane.
Woo! That's exhausting to talk about that stuff. Okay, Chris, let's talk numbers for a second because that's your home turf. and then we'll move on to some of the fun device stuff. So
Sure.
how's the stock? Is it fairly valued? Should I buy or sell?
Whether it's a $6 and something cent stock or an $8 and something cent stock, because it just rallied 30-ish% after BBGM. Short term, I don't know. At the end of the day,
it rallied 30% after my interview with CNBC.
That's true.
Yeah, well, basically I measured it from the morning that they delivered their keynote, right? I guess the morning of the 25th, I think it was. So from that point to the time that I wrote the article, which would have been a week after the end of BBGM, it had rallied 30%. And I don't care whether it's a $6 and something cent stock or an $8 and something cent stock. At the end of the day, it comes down to whether these guys can get their hardware business back to profitability and offset the risk of that service revenue decline that we just talked about. And if they can't do those things, they do not have a business that is viable. And then $6 is going to have, down the road, $6 is going to have looked like it was way too high. And if they can do those things, then it doesn't matter if it was $8, that's going to look way too low. So this is pretty binary, this story. I mean, they are either going to get their shit together and have a business that is viable, in which case stock goes up substantially, or they don't, and they're not making money again, and those stocks in a lot of trouble. So anyway, that being said, how are things going right now? They still have over $2 billion in cash. I think, in fact, it's $2.3 billion now, right? They are essentially generating most of their cash flow from a reduction in what we call working capital. So this is things like collecting bills, accounts receivables. If you can get your accounts receivable balance down, it means you've collected more bills than revenue you billed for in the quarter, and therefore you generate more cash. But it's just kind of like drawing money out of a bank account. You can only do it for so long. You can't continue to draw down your receivables or push out your payables, which accomplishes the same thing. If you pay your bills at a slower rate than you're accruing them, then you're basically saving cash, but you owe that money and you can't do it forever. It'd be like overextending your credit card if you were a consumer. And then the last one is inventory. You could, if you've got inventory on the shelves and you sell your inventory at a faster rate than you're actually selling product, you're drawing down your inventory and you're generating cash from it. So RIM is getting some cash flow from that, but it's not sustainable. So I tend to ignore that when I look at the numbers and look at what is their cash flow from operations excluding those changes in working capital. And they're losing money right now on that basis. So they're burning cash, I should say. So it's not looking to me like it's a huge burn. They're close enough to neutral that I just don't think it matters. The cash flow situation is stable. Problem is the service revenue we've been talking about, right? If it gets worse, they have, that's a very high margin service revenue. So if it goes away, you have a real big problem. They have to come up with money to build inventory for BlackBerry 10. They have to launch that product. They have to do advertising around it. There's money to be spent. They have to pay for restructuring that they've announced. So this is not a story where it's super obvious that they have enough cash to sustain their businesses, but they probably do if they can get themselves to a position where they sell these hardware units and they make money on them. So anyway, like the numbers itself, the actual financials, I don't really care about the financials of the quarter. I care about the cash flow and whether they can get themselves back to a position of making money again. They're growing their sub base 2 million over the quarter. That was really the only good news the street looked at and said, okay, this is a sign that maybe these guys can make it because they're hanging on to their subscriber base. So that's where I'm at on the company.
And I think that's a big, what you said there. There's a lot of truth and realism, and like they're not out of the water yet. They're into the clear yet. But if we think back to our last podcast we recorded, which, Adam, how old's your daughter now?
4 months, a little more.
4 months. So when did we do that podcast? It's in September, after I guess the last earnings report. We did that podcast. I was in San Francisco for Google I/O. Right. We weren't even sure if BlackBerry 10 would come to market ever at that point. We called the show Crying for BlackBerry because we were that depressed over the news, of course, that, one, where the company was at financially, but two, they announced the delay to Q1 2013 instead of launching BlackBerry 10, right now in Q4. And I think that was to me the rock bottom story. Because I'm honestly, the pit of my stomach, I was like, oh, we're never even going to see BB10 go to market. And I think the thing that I'm really positive on right now is it's happening, right? And I think this is the sentiment that's changed in the media. It's changed even on Wall Street. And this last earnings report kind of, and the reaction to the earnings report kind of is that's gone away now. I mean, most of the headlines just wrote BlackBerry, the company, off 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And what we're seeing now is, BlackBerry 10 is going to come to market. Now we're talking about, will they be profitable? Like, the conversation's really changed. And I think we can't understate how huge this is for RIM at this point, going through a massive
lot of people
transition.
Backpedaled.
For sure. No, and it's weird because we know it's not easy times yet, right? They still have a lot they have to deliver on. But I mean, I'm just glad that I'm genuinely excited again. I mean, since that last show we did too, I mean, we've played with the phones. They're not vaporware. I mean, this is hardware with software that's feature complete, and they're just, putting the final polish on and getting things ready to rock. So lots
if anything,
of questions.
Now is the time to be more excited for RIM than ever, because they have a whole new set of handsets coming. They have a whole new operating system coming, and they have basically a whole new company that they're working with. So let's see what they can do.
Nailed it. To me, the story for RIM right now is that this is a startup on an epic scale. This isn't a startup looking to raise $30 million. This is a startup with $2 billion. This isn't a startup looking to have, grow to have 10 million customers. This is a startup that already has 80 million customers, probably another 50 million who've left, who were former customers who might come back. This is a company that already has a brand in the top, 100 worldwide. But it's really a startup at this point. And even with the new CEO, all the management changes they've made and are continuing to make, and org structure changes, to me, that's the story right now. RIM is a startup on an epically big scale. And they have the same opportunities and risks as every startup, right? They can make it, or they could crash and burn, which hopefully we want to see them succeed, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. It comes down to the same kind of stuff I was talking about, they're acting like a big startup. Do they have the capital to make it now?
I was this the other day, as I was wondering if RIM would be able to be that number 3 that they want to be. And we know that Microsoft and Nokia, which are these massive juggernauts of their respective industries, haven't been able to make Windows Phone really, really take off. Do you think that Microsoft and Nokia just stumbled and did all the wrong things, or do you think it was just too tough for them to compete against Android and iPhones and iPads? Because that's really what RIM has to do, is to show Microsoft and Nokia that they can actually do it better.
You have a problem with the traditional problem Windows Phone has had is that carriers have to sell iPhone. They dislike Apple's terms and conditions, but everyone wants to buy an iPhone, so they have to offer it. And they want to sell Android because Android has almost no terms and conditions, and they can do whatever the hell they want with it. And it's been very hard for Microsoft, which people don't want to the same degree as Apple, and Microsoft will not let carriers modify to the same extent as Android, to find a place in between.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that, Windows Phone 7 out of the hop, it didn't have the same sort of pull demand that iOS currently has. And they didn't really differentiate it. They didn't really target who should buy a Windows Phone. The real target market for that phone was just, I don't want to buy an iPhone, so buy this Windows Phone. They didn't really position it in a way that it would appeal to people. And I think RIM, in contrast, is very clearly saying, we're not trying to out Apple. We're not trying to out Android necessarily here, although I think they do want to chip into that market share. They're saying, we're building a phone that's going to appeal to 1 in 5 people.
Well,
the people that 1 in 5
Windows.
Yeah, that too, right? But the people that BlackBerry 10 appeals to, they're going to love it, and they're not going to want to use anything else. And that's how they kind of shoehorn their way back into mind share in the market, by kind of going for a smaller piece of the big pie and not trying to own the whole pie. The other thing too is Apple's customer satisfaction rates are extremely high. I think, Renee, you might know the number, but they're like over 70%. It's very 90%. High, or over 90%, right? So for RIM, it's not trying to necessarily steal back people who've already gone iOS, but to really get the people who are not there. And They're going after that sort of prosumer, they're highly connected, successful user, they're calling it, but people define success on their own terms. I don't know. You know what I'm getting at though, Craig? Like, Windows Phone 7 really failed at defining who they were for. I think Windows Phone 8, they're doing a better job of trying to, get this kind of same OS across all your displays message and consolidate all of Microsoft's portfolio into one phone. And I think it'll be better. But Microsoft has had the last 18 months to actually do something, and they've done nothing. Like, it's not RIM trying to fight for number 3. It's RIM still is number 3 in smartphones. Windows Phone hasn't beat them yet. And, right. So I think we got to be careful how we say it. They have the spot. They just need to hold on to it, and we'll see if Microsoft can beat them.
And Microsoft's strategy was always strange because they would say that they weren't sure they could take on the iPhone, but they thought that people would be unhappy by Android and then go to Windows for a better experience. But then you're giving people 2 opportunities to not pick up your phone if you're relying on being that third choice. And BlackBerry looks like they're trying to offer a better experience out the gate.
Yeah, and I think another thing too, and I said it on that CNBC interview, there's no company called Android going to the carriers to sell the phones. It's Samsungs and HTCs and LGs and Motorola's and those guys. And with Windows Phone, it's going to be the same thing. Maybe, you're going to have Nokia, obviously. Nokia. What is it, Renee? Nokia. You always get mad at me.
No, I always, people yell at me too. I say Nokia, but I'm Canadian. What do I know?
Nokia. I say Nokia, and I butcher all words, so it's okay.
The Europeans call it Nokia.
Nokia. Okay, you got Nokia. You have HTC who unveiled their phones. They look really cool, but HTC isn't making any money in mobile right now because they're trying to keep up with pumping out all these new devices with high-end specs. They never hit economies of scale, and they just keep churning through, but they don't have, Yumi, would you call HTC's model currently a viable business model?
I don't know. They are having a real hard time competing against Samsung, right?
Right. So, they're putting out devices. They kind of have mind share, but they don't have profit. And and I think RIM, because of the fact that, it's companies selling to carriers and not platforms selling to carriers, RIM is still in a good spot. They'll own their software. They'll own their hardware. They have established carrier relationships throughout the world. And I put them ahead of the game in terms of companies like LG or even HTC in terms of winning some of that back. They don't need to necessarily be number 3 even. They just need to be a number 4 company up behind Apple and Samsung, and then it's fighting with, Nokia, that kind of thing.
They have to be profitable. So, Apple was tiny in computers, but they were hugely profitable. That's a viable business.
Yeah. The thing about Nokia too is they are Nokia's up there in the top whatever they are. I can't remember what position they have in the world now, but I guess they'd be the number 2 maker in the world still, right? Sorry, who? No, forget it. Anyway, I think Samsung's number 1 now, right? In terms of overall market share. Did they just pass Nokia, if I remember correctly? Not all of it, right? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. We're nodding. So they're number 1. Nokia's number 2. But they're not going to stay number 2 because Symbian's dying and the world's moving towards smartphones 100%. And once that happens, 100% I exaggerate, it's going to take a long time. But point being, Nokia's Symbian is dying. And if Windows 8 does not win that market share back, and if Nokia is not a big player in that, Nokia is dropping off the map hugely here. So it's essentially Samsung and Apple, and then whoever else fights against them. So RIM has a chance to take that number 3 spot, and everyone else is fighting for it too. ZTE and Huawei and HTC, and I saw some comments about the hardware is commoditized. Well, I think it's not a real accurate statement yet. It's maybe heading in that direction for sure, but Samsung's clearly making money on their hardware. So how are they able to do that? Whereas HTC is struggling like hell, even though they have some high-end stuff too. But I guess when they're both running Android, HTC can't really differentiate against Samsung. Whereas a company like RIM or Apple, who control their own operating systems, they can differentiate and then therefore should have a better chance of making money on their hardware. Thoughts?
Well, and having used Android now quite a bit, having used all the platforms quite a bit now, the need for these Android manufacturers to differentiate and come up with things like TouchWiz and HT Sense, etc., they ruin the phones. You buy a new Android phone, the first thing you want to do is spend a week taking off the OS that they differentiated the phone with to sell it, to put on stock Android again, or Jelly Bean, or whatever you can.
It's true. Just buy a Galaxy Nexus and get it over with.
Yeah, it's so, it's stupid, right? So I don't know. I don't even have the words. It's a stupid user experience right now. Stock or die. Thank you, Tron, in the comments. And these Android phones really that are customized suck. So I mean, it's horrible user experience. I don't know. Move on. I got ranty there.
Custom suckage episode title.
Actually, the thing is, Kevin, that Google is trying to fix that whole issue that fragments the Android space, and then in the next version of Android, they will allow you to turn off the skins that people like HTC and Samsung force you to have on your phone, and you can get rid of them. So I'm actually looking forward to that, because I can't stand it when you have to learn Sense UI, and then the next day you buy a Samsung and you have to learn TouchWiz. Next day you buy an HTC, you have to use Sense UI. It's kind of silly.
Well, the only
they're glitchy too. They make the OS less stable.
Oh, definitely glitchy, laggy. It's just not a great experience.
Slows down your updates.
Yeah, it slows down your updates. It's really bad, right? It's really actually a disservice to the world that Android became the #1 platform, because it's really not a good user experience for the average person, right? If you're a smart person, yeah, I'm gonna do next week. We're gonna do a CrackBerry Kevin Mobile Nations World Tour dedicated podcast and go through all my Android and iOS 6 experiences. But it's funny, there is no best smartphone anymore, right? There's this best smartphone platform and a best smartphone for a person. And iOS is definitely has that mainstream average consumer simplicity about it, which some people really value, and a lot of us, myself included, think is getting really boring and stale.
Makes you want to throw it against a wall. You can say
and there's some basic things in there, Renee, that honestly, it to me, like, as much as Apple talks about their attention to detail on the hardware and how we built it and we invented new manufacturing techniques to do this and that, and then I use the iPhone 5 and I'm like, every night when I go to sleep and I plug it in and I have to go tap, tap, tap and set do not disturb and do this, I'm like, how come when I plug in the cable, it just doesn't pop up and say, do you want your bedtime settings?
I have gotten so many
why does it do that?
phone calls from Kevin since he picked up an iPhone 5.
Yeah, I'm like, why doesn't it do this stuff, right? How come it's still vibrating in my ear? I'm like, today I was dialing a phone call, and as I was dialing, then I got like it vibrating about a calendar alert. At the same time, I was in the middle of placing the phone call. I didn't even connect yet. I'm like, what the hell's going on? How do you not fix this stuff?
It took us 3 years for copy paste. We're working on it.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Way too much work.
You can schedule do not disturb, by the way. You can make it come on and go off automatically, so that kind of addresses your issue, but not when you plug in the power.
Not really.
It doesn't have a bedside mode the way BlackBerry.
I sent Renee a list though. I've got on my iPhone 5, which I picked up, to use it. I always buy all the iPhones and try everything out for a bit, and it's the same iPhone, just a little bit bigger, right? There's nothing really that different in the experience. But this is my list here. And it's called Things I Hate About the iPhone 5. And every now and then I send an updated version to Renee. So I'm gonna talk about all this stuff. But
you're lucky you have the wide screen to fit that whole list on there, Kev.
No, but iMessage is really shit also, okay? Because the number of times now I've used it, and to me it looks like the person should have got the message, and then I talk to them the next day, and I'm like, what the fuck? You didn't get my text? And they're like, no. I'm like, what? And we go through it and we compare our histories side by side, and there's missing messages all the time. And I'm like, how come you don't have a blog post every single day about this, Renee, screaming, fix this stuff? Anyways, that'll be next week.
Adam, wasn't he filling out this list at breakfast at like BlackBerry Jam? He was sitting there. He was like, "Man, I hate this."
Thing that he was filling
out. Whips out his iPhone. He's filling out the list.
Siri, add this to my list. I said, "Add it." Siri, add Siri to my list.
And Android, your list is full. One of my things with Android too. I travel a lot, and every time I get off an airplane with Android, I guaranteed have to restart the phone with both the 1X and the S3, so it actually like finds the cell tower properly and things start working again. Just taking it off airplane mode, especially if you fly Canada to the US, there's no hope in hell it's going to work properly.
You used to have to do
and
that.
BlackBerry's always been so fast at like instantly finding your network.
Yeah, I remember you used to have to reboot your BlackBerry after you got off the phone, but that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Okay, I'm going to quit ranting, but all I'm saying is like...
You can't believe you're losing to these idiots.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I get what RIM screwed up, but I can't believe how all it took to win over everybody was like a little bit of swipiness, to quote Adam.
Pinch and zoom a photo. That's all it took for them to take over the world.
Yeah, pretty much. That's all it took. RIM really dropped the ball, because if they could have done that stuff, sooner and not forgotten about what actually matters. And everybody else just kind of glosses over these things. They don't even, they review phones. They don't even use them. Android support for Bluetooth in vehicles? Crap. So inconsistent, like unreliable. It's a lottery ticket for me if my Bluetooth is going to work. Every time I get in the car, I'm like, it might work, it might not. I make a phone call, it's connected, it's dialing, then there's no sound comes through and it disconnects.
Maybe
I'm like, really? This is your highest end Android phone and it doesn't work with my Range Rover? Really?
Excuse me.
And that's why, and that's the real story why my 1X got a cracked screen, because I fucking threw it against the floor.
In our defense, Kev, we did do a lot of
first world problems.
And we have been doing all the iPhone. We've been publishing all the iPhone gripes on iMore, so we're not.
No, you've been doing a great job. You've been doing a great job, but there's some that I just don't get it, because it's literally Apple doesn't see it as a problem. I mean, even on the iPhone, okay, how come like if the calendar icon changes to show me the date? Why don't you do that for the weather, so that whatever's like, give me in the weather app the option to set my default city and that little icon that says 73 degrees all the time. So I keep thinking it's warmer in Winnipeg. I go outside, I'm like,
freezes to
oh, what? This isn't 70. It's minus 40. Why don't you fix that? It's not that hard. Think about the people using the phone. They think about this artistic crap, which is valuable. I get it. They go into design and they don't actually think about people using the phone. So every night when I plug it into bed, I curse. Every day when I leave the house and the weather's not right there, I curse. And then, how come the cord you gave me for the power cord is 3 inches long? So, I mean, every other smartphone I have, plug it into the wall, I have a little docking station, it reaches no problem. This thing, I leave it on the floor because the cord doesn't even go from behind the bed up onto a nightstand. I'm like, really? You're that cheap, Apple?
You're supposed to have an electrician come in and put a plug in the right place.
Give me an extra 12 inches.
That's what she said.
I was waiting.
Sorry. This is all coming next week. So, BlackBerry listeners, I'm sorry. Renee, I looked at you. And
yeah, you just lost it.
I'm just waiting for the blog post that says, give me an extra 12 inches.
That could just be the podcast title this
That's
time.
why I'm BlackBerry
Podcast 091.
BlackBerry by choice, 12 inches of happiness.
Okay, we have 7 minutes to talk about a lot of stuff here because you, me, and Craig have real jobs. Hardware stuff. So, okay, a few things. Let's talk on them quick here. BlackBerry Dev Alpha, the touchscreen one, the L series, we've pretty much talked that to death. We have a very good idea of what it looks like. I bet if you took apart your Dev Alpha device, there's probably an L series phone buried within it, which actually, if you look at the photo with the battery cover off, you can pretty much see the L series phone layered within it. Number one, so that's cool. Number two, while we were at BB Jam,
don't encourage people.
It was the unplanned part of the whole show, but basically on the final day, an hour before the earnings came out, a video leaked to the internet, which was funny. First, a couple photos leaked, and then we got on looking for the video, and we found it right away. And basically, a guy in the UK who's obviously working under contract for RIM to produce some internal marketing videos was an idiot and uploaded this video to his public Vimeo account, whatever it's called. Pretty sure he's now fired and RIM is probably not working with him ever again. But contained in the video, in addition to some of RIM's BlackBerry 10 marketing strategy, were photos of the first N series device, BlackBerry 10 phone with a keyboard. So pretty interesting. I mean, footprint of the phone, it's kind of what we were expecting, I think. You know, no trackpad, no navigation buttons in the middle. It's basically a Bold 9900 with a bigger, taller screen and a keyboard. It's caused some contention in CrackBerry because I guess some people are still expecting a trackpad and buttons. But we've been saying since the playbook was unveiled that you can kiss those goodbye when you know that OS eventually hits a phone. And the keyboard has been kind of straightened off versus the smiley face. So, whereas I have the smiley face on the 9900 and the keyboard keys are all kind of rounded, it's a happy looking device. They're straight across, more like the P9981. And there's been some concern over that. And, will it be as good a keyboard to type on as the 9900, which is the best keyboard ever made? So I don't know. Blaze, let's hear your thoughts on it.
On what? The trackpad gone?
The BB10 keyboard phone, all of it.
Oh. I don't know. I'm honestly not entirely impressed with it. I mean, it looks good because I like the BlackBerry Bold 9900, but I don't know. It looks too much like the BlackBerry Bold 9900, so kind of want something different. And I think I'll go with the touchscreen because I really do love the touchscreen keyboard. I like flicking away the letters and everything.
I'm with Blaze.
Words. It's awesome. I
feel like the OS itself wasn't designed really to be used with like on a keyboard device like that. Like it's meant to, touch it and swipe it and do all kinds of stuff. So when you kind of, scrunch it up onto a screen like that and then throw a keyboard on it, I think it kind of takes away from it quite a bit.
How's the typing experience for you then, Blaze, on the touch screen? You were saying that you like swiping the words, and I was thinking about that a lot, wondering if people are going to get used to that whole concept because it's a different paradigm.
I don't know. I get kind of used to it because, I use the iPhone 5, the Galaxy Nexus, and the Galaxy S3, but when I use the Dev Alpha, it's pretty much like it's kind of different because when you're typing on the BlackBerry 10 keyboard, it's almost like you're not really typing because you're only typing the first 2 or 3 letters of each word, and then you can just flick it up and you're done. So I don't know, everything seems to be a little bit faster when you're typing on it because you're not actually typing out the words and you're not having to necessarily move your fingers away to choose some of that text prediction as well. So, like on Android, you get the text pop up or it will automatically fill it, but you physically have to move your finger away from it and tap it to have it acknowledge it and put it on the screen. But here, you're not necessarily moving your finger. You're just sliding your finger not even an inch up the screen, and it flicks the word right up onto the screen. You're done. You're already onto the next word before you even realize it. So it's definitely something that people are really going to have to go ahead and get used to. But once you get used to it, it's almost like you've been doing it forever, right? But I don't know how hardcore enthusiasts, keyboard enthusiasts, are going to take the transition if they're going to end up going and trying the touchscreen and be turned off by that experience because they're expecting something more like the Galaxy Nexus or Android or the iPhone experience, because it really isn't the same type of experience. It has a learning curve of its own that you need to adopt to. And if you don't get it, you're just going to end up getting frustrated with it and be like, screw that shit.
Well, wait, the worst case, but you can turn off the swiping words and go back to tapping on top.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, we were Kevin and I were talking about that. And I was saying the more I played with it, the quicker I've gotten. But I think there's so many ways to tweak that keyboard. Because you can turn the prediction off so it's in the columns, and then it shows it. Basically 3 columns along the top. So if you prefer it that way, or you can turn it off altogether. And then it just becomes essentially a regular keyboard with no prediction. So I think for most of the users, it's going to be fine because you'll be able to kind of find a happy medium to it.
I'm going to hold my comments until maybe next week when we do our mobile nations world tour podcast. Or actually, I have a long editorial I want to write. But it's funny because now, so after years of Renee, you can call me a hypocrite, right? Just shunning touchscreen keyboards. I'm now pretty darn effective with them.
No, you didn't shun them. You wanted one or the other. You disliked a hybrid of both. You wanted one or the other.
Yeah, and I'd say that's still true, I think. My biggest thing is, without tactile feedback, right, a touchscreen will always lose when it comes to walking and talking and typing at the same time, or being in the back of a bumpy taxi cab ride. Like, it's always better when you have that physical keyboard. But if you're like sitting still and typing, that kind of thing, you can go fast. And now I can type extremely fast on Android with SwiftKey 3. I've, got my customization settings to a T on that thing. And with Android, because you have a bigger device, it very much embraces this two-hand, two-thumb typing experience. Okay, because the device is wide enough, like a Bold 9900, that I can comfortably move my thumbs, and they're not too close together and they're not too far apart. And I'm one of these people. I hate trying to take a touchscreen and type in landscape, which Dan Rubino on our Windows Phone site likes to do that. And I'm like, I tell him he's crazy because you have to move your thumb so much further on every single keystroke. You're just inefficient. So it might be accurate, but it's not a comfortable, efficient experience. But Android devices with SwiftKey 3, it's pretty good and very fast. So when I got the iPhone 5, I was cursing it because I'm like, why the heck didn't Apple make a wider device? I said they're all backwards. They say they keep it skinny so that it's a one-handed user experience. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. You want a two-handed typing experience. You have two thumbs. We evolved, God gave us, whatever you want to say. We have two thumbs. Why do you want to be at 50% capacity? So at first I was trying to fight the iPhone 5 and really two-thumb type it. And if you have small hands, you can. And I can get in there not bad if I focus. But in general, I said, you know what? And I have friends at Apple who told me this. Apple's a one-handed typing company. Everybody at Apple types one thumb on that keyboard. That's how they designed it. And as soon as I just embrace that and I type with one thumb, I basically just leave it up to auto prediction to do everything and type as fast as I can. I'm actually really good at typing with an iPhone 5 now, or whichever iPhone. And for years I wasn't. I finally just had to say, you know what? I'm not going to use two thumbs. One thumb, leave it to auto correction to fix every mistake.
And now you have a spare thumb.
Yeah, I have a spare thumb to,
Hey Kevin, the idea of keeping a phone down to that size, other companies have done it. I mean, I think we've just seen Samsung put out the massive S3 with a huge screen, and now they're coming out with the Mini. Why are they doing that? Because people actually want to just use one hand, so they have had to reduce the size of the screen. My personal best phones are the phones like the Motorola Atrix, which has got a 4-inch screen and it's slim and you can type with one thumb. Those are the ones that I really like. And the bigger screens, the ones that are wider, I then have to go to that two-finger or two-thumb touching typing.
Screw that, man. Give me a Galaxy Note.
That's
why I swipe across that thing.
So this is the interesting thing with the BlackBerry 10 keyboard is it is both a one-thumb and two-thumb keyboard. It's wide enough that you can type on it with two thumbs. However, when you start typing on it with two thumbs, the whole swiping words up thing, to me, it's not helpful because my thumbs go so freaking fast and they're covering 3/4 of the keyboard because I'm on top of the keyboard looking, my thumbs are both right there on top, that I'm not swiping up one single word. I'm in that mode of typing as fast as I can and, leaving it to auto correction, or maybe I'll tap a word if there's a really word long and I need to suggest it. However, the swiping thing on BlackBerry 10 is great now if you go back to one thumbing the phone. Because then it becomes not about typing fast and maintaining that typing rhythm. It actually becomes saving strokes. That's the benefit of one thumb typing, is saving strokes. On a wider keyboard especially. Now, if you go to iPhone 5 narrowness, it's not about saving strokes. It's really about typing as quick as you can and letting autocorrection fix it. So, I don't know. I have like my CrackBerry Kevin's hierarchy of smartphone keyboard needs. And logically, it's really funny because all three of them are pretty different. I think BlackBerry 10 has the ability to be a happy medium of both one thumb and two thumb typing experiences, both being really good. But it is a little more complicated too. And some of it is unnecessary. Like the swiping, you just don't need it when you type with two thumbs.
Or you just use Siri like Martin Scorsese in a taxi.
Yes, yeah. I actually sent Adam a text message that I wrote with voice dictation. And his reply was, "This is the dumbest text message you've ever sent me. Are you trying to type this with voice dictation?"
He called me out something, and it was a reply like when I landed in San Jose or whatever. It was like, "Hey, I'm here, blah, blah, blah." And the message back was like, "Hello, Adam. Glad you made it." And I was like, read it. And I'm like, "Did you write that with Siri?" And he said yes, and whatever. And this has to be one of the dumbest messages I've ever gotten because everything he was saying was just so ridiculous, and I couldn't deal with it. It was very amazing.
Didn't understand it.
You can't look the voice typing. I mean, it works great on Android. Google Now, I've used it for a while. It works great. I type with Siri. It works great. RIM just needs to include it and get with the pack. I mean, people want to do that these days.
Well, that's
Siri.
my question.
I tried
How
to
many
set an
people
appointment
really
for
want
this
to do it these
podcast and it
days?
didn't work.
Maybe we should
But
do
how
a
many-
poll on how many people would want a Siri-esque.
Well, I'm sure Renee's done
think
it.
we've
How many
probably done
people are
that
actually using Siri or voice dictation on iPhone?
You know,
I think we've done it, but
a
we
lot
should
of
do it
people are.
again.
The thing with Siri that makes it so problematic is that it sometimes works, and anything that sometimes works will make you lose your mind. If it always works, you're fine. If it never works, you stop using it. But if it sometimes works, it just drives you insane, and that's where Siri is. And a lot of our readers just they get no value out of it. But I think with iOS 6, it's become much better. And we're going to rerun the poll just to see what the satisfaction levels are now.
She's terrible at time conversion, too.
You have a Nova Scotian accent. There's no
You
Siri
should
plug-in for
understand
that.
me.
No, but I think
Okay,
natural
guys.
language is the future. I mean, everyone's going to have to be there eventually.
I love how we've turned this into a little bit of everything show. It's kind of entertaining.
Pack it up.
Yeah, I love how we
Awesome.
totally strayed off the actual documentation that we were supposed to go by.
The
It's better
outline
this
of
way,
links
don't you
to
think?
talk
It's
about.
like the old shows,
Yeah,
Kevin. You just
that's-
busk it and just jump around and get stuff done.
It's organic.
It's all good. It's very organic. Okay, so we have probably 10 minutes left tops. Craig, are you good for 10 more?
Yeah, sure.
Yumi, you still okay, or you got a jet?
I gotta go.
Okay, you can jump off if you need to. I want to finish a
Yeah.
couple of things here, but
You guys finish up. I don't think you need me for it, and Renee's prepped to drop me. I'm pretty sure. So,
okay, awesome.
See you
Okay,
guys.
Yumi, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
all right.
Adam's off
So-
to feed the baby.
Adam's gone. That's it. Cassidy can take a square.
World's youngest
Is she there?
podcaster, yo.
This
Adam's
is
on
the end
mute.
of the show where everything falls apart and gets awesomer.
Can you
Okay,
fit the
so we
baby
need
in
to
the other
talk.
square? You
Oh,
wouldn't be able to split us.
Cassidy's
I'll just hold it like
ice.
this.
Can she blog yet?
Is
We got a
Cassidy
bunch of
getting
kids
full-
apps to review.
Is Cassidy getting touchscreen or keyboard? Have you decided yet?
Well, she just yanked my headphones out.
Okay, Blaze, walk us through BlackBerry Aristo. So, and just to frame it, basically, we're still waiting for the first two BlackBerry 10 phones, and then specs have leaked for the maybe the third, fourth, or fifth one, but what's perceived to be the next high-end phone, which for some reason has a quad-core processor slated in it.
Yeah, it's basically the device that everybody was kind of hoping would, I guess you could say, was kind of hoping would be one of the first devices off the line. 1.5 gigahertz processor, Qualcomm quad-core crate, GSM, of course, has LTE on board. The Octa OLED glass with a 4.6-inch display on it. 1280 by 720, 16 by 9 for format. 2 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes of flash with a hot swappable SD card slot. And it's got pretty much every Wi-Fi connection option that you could imagine on it, from 802.1 to 4 to 5 gigahertz. Of course, it has a 4G mobile hotspot built into it. Micro HDMI, Wi-Fi Direct, NFC, DLNA, Bluetooth 4.0, and a 2800 milliamp per hour battery, but that battery is not necessarily removable. This device actually started, it popped up a long time ago. When I first found out about it, I only knew that it had a quad-core processor, but it came out shortly after the BlackBerry London picture actually emerged, and at that time they didn't have a series or name assigned to it. But apparently it's going to be one device out of a series of devices, the A series devices, which will be the higher end devices. I don't know what else to really say about it except for the specs, assuming that they all fall in line, are absolutely amazing. And I would, as much as I hate to say it, I want to be one of those people who goes out and buys one of the first BlackBerry 10 devices available, but I don't want to be one of those people that ends up getting burned by having a lower class device by being an early adopter when I could have waited and got this device later on, because it pretty much blows everything else away, assuming that all of the information about it is absolutely correct. And, you know, most of the stuff looks legit on there and plausible. So,
Well, for the sake of rim stock, I think all the BlackBerry early adopters just need to get hosed on this one and suck it up, or else Arista will never come to market if
that's the other thing. If nobody buys the first batch, then you can write this one off. But
I mean what I find interesting is, you know, what are they going to do with the quad core? What do you need it for? I mean, look at the playbook on dual core. That's already 2-year-old hardware. And I mean, they designed it, probably at least 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago when they spec'd that thing together. And I use it. I mean, I'm playing with my playbook. I was downloading all these, what was that one? The Mayhem one I downloaded last night. Major Mayhem and some of the Amiga games that are now coming to playbook I downloaded. And I'm like, I don't know, this thing, I never think it needs more power. Not once have I said I feel like the playbook is underpowered and it's been out forever.
I don't know. So it's from a tech standpoint, what people want. You know, other than Apple, even Apple nowadays is starting to turn their stuff into sort of like a tech race because they're becoming more friendly with putting out some of those specs in certain aspects. Before, they never used to give out any information. They wouldn't even tell you how much RAM the iPhone had because it didn't matter. It doesn't matter how much RAM it has. It doesn't matter what kind of processor it has as long as everything works. And we're kind of at that point with all these Android devices that are coming out where specs matter. Everybody wants to see those huge numbers. They want to see 2 gigabytes of RAM. They want to see those quad-core processors because they think that it's going to go ahead and matter. But when it comes down to it, specs don't really mean shit all, really. If the operating system doesn't work with the specs, no matter how many specs you put into it, it's not going to work appropriately. You could have a quadrillion core processor in there. If the operating system is shit to begin with, you're not going to have anything to go behind it. So you know,
Chris, that's a great example. Android is a perfect example of that, right? You could have like a quad core CPU in that thing, and Android gets jerky after 5 minutes of usage.
Yeah, you'd still experience lag
and that kind of stuff. And it turned out it was actually an operating system issue, and they fixed it in Jelly Bean, right, where they came up with the Project Butter, where they fixed all of the animations.
Or so
and
they'd
like
have
that.
you believe.
See, it was an operating system thing all along, but everybody was just throwing hardware at it, throwing hardware, bigger screens, bigger CPUs, and it didn't make a damn of difference. The phone
exactly. And like to take that aspect and put it in an opposite direction, if you look at the BlackBerry 7 devices that are out on the market right now, they have like a 1.2 gigahertz processor in there? Yeah, I think it's like a 1.2 gigahertz Qualcomm processor in the 9900. Anyways, it has a 1.2 gigahertz Qualcomm processor. You don't need any more than that in here. The only difference is, right now, with the BlackBerry 7 devices, the operating system's from like 1990 or something like that. It's like 17 fucking years old. So obviously it's not going to work copacetically with the device, no matter how much horsepower you put into it. It's why RIM is building BlackBerry 10, because this operating system is done.
So, testify, Chris.
Anyway, that's the whole specs thing. I hate specs because, like I said, at the end of the day, you could jam whatever you want in there. If the operating system isn't in tune with the hardware that you're putting into it, it's not going to go ahead and work, no matter what you do to it. Like you said, Project Butter. That was Android's realization that specs are not going to go ahead and help everything. There's further OS optimization that needs to be taken care of first.
Somebody needs to tell Samsung that, because they're just coming out with a 5.5-inch screen phone. Aren't you going to look great using that? Talking at the airport.
Honestly, that's one thing that I do like about Apple. They don't go out and blast those specs upon everybody because they have faith in their operating system to go ahead and handle that. They know that stuff's just going to work, because they have all of the power in there, but they're not telling people exactly what that power is. They're leaving it up to the people to go ahead and find out what it is on their own, for those who actually care. Most people don't really care. They just care that their phone works, right?
Yep.
So that's it. That's all I got to say on that. That's my rant for the day.
I want to repackage what you said and hope we can change the world moving forward. So it's not about specs. It's about, we need to start thinking about these things as a powertrain, right? The problem with specs is you can analyze them all individually, right? What's the PPI on the display? How many megahertz or gigahertz is the CPU? How much RAM does it have? And everybody picks apart specs on like individual lines on a table, and they compare them as if they're all equivalent. But the core thing is all those specs get tied together by the operating system, right? It's what that OS makes out of every spec given to it all the way down the line. And together it makes a powertrain. And I mean, think about it like a car and an automobile, right? You know, you could buy a car with 500 horsepower engine, but if you put shitty tires on it that are bald and have no traction, you're not going to win the quarter-mile drag race, even though you've got the horsepower to do so.
You'll be the best
it just
old man
doesn't.
in the ditch.
If the power doesn't get to the wheels and there's no traction, you're screwed. And that's the problem with mobile today is we all look at specs and we don't think about the total powertrain and the total performance delivered through that powertrain. And I think that's something here that it will be interesting because knowing the specs in BB10 and knowing the way a lot of tech reviewers think, they're going to say, oh, it's pretty good, but, you know, the specs are kind of not comparing to what Samsung just announced by the Samsung. And the problem is those people are sprouting BS because they don't get that Samsung whatever is probably going to get glitchy after you use it for 2 weeks because it'll fill up with calendar contacts from Facebook and bog down because that's what it does to me all the time. And I think that's the key thing. It's thinking about the performance and the powertrain that ties it all together, not the individual specs. So even though BB10 at launch, you know, those specs might not be the same as Aristo there, I feel like the experience, based on what we've seen to date, is not going to be anything where we're saying, oh, I wish it had more. I wish it was quad core, not dual core, because I don't think you're going to notice hill of beans difference for a while. But I do think it's good that RIM is at least trying to get into the specs game with a device like that. I think the only thing, though, is we're looking at those specs now. That phone might be 9 months or 12 months away. We're not totally sure right now. And at this point next year, when it hits the market, we're going to be like, oh, it doesn't have 8 cores. Oh, my God, it's not good enough.
It's not a 9-inch screen. What the hell?
Yeah, terrible. It's not a phablet.
It's not a phablet.
Tableau, please, Craig. Tableau.
I think the big thing here is the specs are all now at a point where they really pass this threshold of good enough. And after that, and I think actually Apple's doing a good job there, Renee, of kind of making it less about specs, or at least certain specs. I mean, they push the specs they think are going to matter. Like, say, the Retina display was a good example, but they're not.
That was their big thing. That was their big play. They turned it from a spec into an experience fight. They did that famous commercial where they said, you know, lightness and thinness and speed, these are nice things, but they're not enough. It's not about the technology. It's about how this famous celebrity and this tiny child smile when they use it.
But honestly, Apple's work they've done there, I think, is going to help BlackBerry out now with the launch of BB10, because I think RIM is putting to market a differentiated experience. And whereas you'll see Android continue to push specs and those companies like Samsung that push specs, you know, RIM's going to play, hey, this experience is for these types of people, and we're saving you seconds every time you hold the phone in your hand due to this experience. So I don't know. I think it'll be in RIM's favor a little bit, even if, you know, the specs aren't what now we want to see or something like that.
I agree with you.
Whew, what else do we have to touch on here before we wind down? I really want to tell everybody a Kevin story because I've had the craziest 2 weeks and I haven't told anybody. Does that mean I have to tell everybody now?
It's your show. You're the David Hasselhoff here. You can do what you want.
Okay, so yeah, I forgot it. Renee, I'm used to you hosting as soon as you're on, so it's like I'm deferring to you for guidance.
Kevin, tell us a story.
Thanks, Renee. Glad you asked.
Is this really an original story, though? Or
yeah, San Jose, flying home from BB Jam. Guess what I did?
You broke the phone.
I fell asleep on the airplane. As I fell asleep...
My God, Kevin, like that's shocking.
And my head fell forward. As it was about to hit, like, the tray and my drink, I woke up and I snapped awake so fast I gave myself whiplash. And I pinched a nerve in my neck, and I was absolutely fucked for 4 days until the chiro guy fixed me right up. And like 2 sessions, 15 minutes, he cured me. But it took me 4 days of waiting to get in. So let that be a lesson: is never, ever, ever
go to San Diego.
Fall asleep on an airplane and give yourself whiplash when you wake up all of a sudden.
Took you 4 days to get in? Is that how socialized medicine works? Jeez.
No, it was just the day it happened, because I got home Friday night at midnight. Everybody's closed Saturday, Sunday. Monday, we were super busy with work, and I called, and he was booked that day. Tuesday, I actually had to go to the hospital for something else, which was scheduled a year ago, which was kind of fun. It was like an EGD. They stick the scope down your lungs and check, or down your stomach and check out everything. Basically the other end of a colonoscopy, right? Colonoscopy goes up your butt. This one goes down your stomach.
Sorry, you're breaking up, Kevin.
Wait, can you see that?
No, I was just kidding. It was the colonoscopy.
Oh, you jerk. Anyways, I had that checked, but separate medical issue aside here, it turned out in my esophagus at the bottom, it was a little like restricted. So when they went down and looked around, everything was like super good, all healthy and that. But they're able with that scope to actually like dilate the esophagus a little bit, and that cured me. And then on Wednesday, Craig, you're gonna love this. I went for allergy testing because back in April before BlackBerry World, I was supposed to fly to New York, and I almost died at the airport when I had a crazy allergic reaction. And we didn't know. I thought it was to Fisherman Friend's cough candy that I ate. But I literally had like the firefighters and ambulance at the airport because I had this crazy reaction. Guess what it turns out it was?
What?
Honey. I have an allergy to specific types of, I guess, honey, which I never knew about. And I popped 2 of these royal jelly vitamins. Like they're like royal jelly pills, which are supposed to be good for your immune system. So that day for lunch, I took like a vitamin and 2 royal jelly pills. Went to the airport. An hour later, I guess these 2 pills hit my system, and I was like, crazy reaction to it. So we tested everything I had, and
wow.
And yeah, kind of messed up.
That is messed up. And how do you know which honey you're not allowed to touch?
Well, I mean, put it this way: I've made it to 32 years old without dying, so I'm not that panicked anymore. But I mean. A couple times thinking back, knowing it's honey, I've had a couple things where I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Where I had like,
I think one of the funny things though, when we were sitting at breakfast, whatever day we were in San Jose, and Kevin got like a parfait or something, and he's like starting to eat it, had yogurt and whatever, and it's got honey in it, and he's like, I kind of think that honey is what I'm allergic to, or I had that reaction, and he just like looks at it for a second, and then he's like, and he just keeps eating it, and I'm like sitting there like staring at him, hoping he doesn't like swell up and pass out on the floor.
I love that episode of Big Bang.
Yeah,
well, that's pretty funny. So at least we killed that. So long story short, we had like this crazy week of medical issues, but everything turned out good, and I'm as good as could be now. But in 1 week, had like all these things go massively wrong and then massively good.
And you disappeared into the forests of Manitoba.
Once you hit the barbershop, you'll be back to normal.
Barbershop will cure me, +1 for science and medicine. And then we launched the CrackBerry forums upgrade on Friday. So if anybody hasn't checked them out yet, go do it. We're still making some tweaks and bugs. We've had so much feedback there. It's awesome to see the community. And it's really funny how the CrackBerry community is way more feedback intensive. I don't know what the word is, or aggressive with their feedback than say Android Central and iMore. Because we've been working on some of these forum upgrades for months now. And, I've had my hands in all of them. And we pushed it on Android Central first. And then again, we made some tweaks. And then we pushed it on iMore. I think, Renee, you had a bit of feedback, but nothing too crazy.
We had a lot of pushback the first couple of days, and people started to shrug and use it.
Yeah, and it makes sense. See, for me, the starting to use it thing didn't go away, right? It's just like the emails keep coming.
They're waiting for BlackBerry. They have a lot of time on their hands.
Oh, it's going to be crazy, though, because I was like, wow, if this is the reaction over like the forums upgrade, and it's a massive improvement all the way through, but it's different, right? So you got to get used to it. I'm like, I can't wait till these 80 million BlackBerry users, whatever portion upgrade to BB10, start hitting the forums, because there's a lot of differences in it. And it's going to be a lot of getting used to a new BlackBerry experience.
They're going to love it, or Kevin's going to come to each of their houses and beat them up.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a video why you love BlackBerry 10
or else
point.
Yeah, or else.
Here's why you're not getting. OS 2.1 on the playbook finally hit. Blaze, what's new?
Everything. No, I don't know.
There's no DLNA, right? Which is the one thing my brother was bugging me for.
There's no DLNA yet, and there's still no AC3 audio, which is probably at the top of most people's list. But there's a lot of enterprise stuff that is basically included, like, where was it? I'm pulling up the full list here. New IT policies and stuff. The majority of the stuff actually was enterprise stuff. Most people aren't necessarily going to care about that. But for the consumer side, setting up a Wi-Fi connection is no longer mandatory. So if you set it up, you don't necessarily have to go through that whole process of going through everything, setting up the Wi-Fi, making sure that you have a connection. Software updates are no longer mandatory as well during the setup process. You can postpone them to another later time whenever you really want to actually go ahead and update the device. Overall, the browser is a little bit faster. Boot time is a little bit faster. Reboot time is a little bit faster. If you do a lot of Wi-Fi file sharing as well, that for some people has been improved upon. I haven't necessarily noticed that, but I don't know. Some people say that they've noticed it. What else? Portrait mode can be used in the email, the calendar, the contacts app. Most of the other apps already had that, but now the PIM apps all have it. You have full access to IMAP email folders as well, so you can organize your email and all of that stuff the way that you actually really want to organize it. You're not just bound by what is set. If you find yourself sideloading a lot of Android apps or downloading a lot of Android apps from the BlackBerry app world, Android apps will now run in their own individual windows rather than just having one Android app open, not able to go ahead and open up another one. You can open up 5, 6 Android apps all at the same time without having to close down the other one. Sticking with the Android stuff, Android apps that have access to the camera can now access the camera directly on the playbook as well. Unfortunately, that doesn't include Instagram because they do a compatibility check when you actually open it up. What else? Even though the video store came to Canada before the actual 2.1 release, that is now available in Canada. You can actually just download it. And one of the larger items was the text messaging. Text messaging is now supported over BlackBerry Bridge. Also, when you're bridged and connected to Wi-Fi, the BlackBerry Playbook automatically sends and receives data over the Wi-Fi network so that you're not constantly using your data plan. Some people actually had a lot of confusion with that about how it was actually working. If you're bridged to your BlackBerry Playbook, then it's not using any of that data over the device itself. It's just using it through your Wi-Fi network. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of BlackBerry Fusion stuff, Active Sync certification management. Again, a lot of the rest of the stuff is enterprise stuff. I'll just drop the link in the comments for everybody who's actually here. Sorry, people at home.
I mean, I guess the real question now is what's left for the playbook before, people are 100% happy with it. I mean, when I reviewed it, I said it was sort of a second base hit. So it's still more apps.
Yeah, I think there's more apps, but at this point, I'm kind of like questioning as to when does the BlackBerry 10 transition start as well for the BlackBerry Playbook? Like, have they even thought about that yet? Because we've seen nothing of it. We've seen BlackBerry 10 on smartphones, but we've not seen BlackBerry 10 on the Playbook yet. So that's something to look forward to.
This is an interesting question. Do you think the whole peak gesture makes sense on a tablet?
No. I don't think it will make I don't think that particular stuff will make the transition. I think there's a lot of stuff that will, like how the messages and BBM and all of that stuff is integrated, because that's not really too far away from what it is now. All of that stuff, you have a universal inbox on the BlackBerry Playbook now. Your LinkedIn messages, your Facebook messages, your Twitter, all that stuff comes in on the BlackBerry Playbook right now to the universal inbox. So that stuff is kind of almost complete, but I don't think you're going to see...
What they need to do is just bake it in, so when you swipe from the far left or something on the home screen, it's always there.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see... you may get that BlackBerry Hub experience, but you're not going to get, the I don't want to say the active frames, because that's not right, because the active frames are essentially already on the Playbook. But you're not going to get that whole peak gesture or anything like that, I don't think. I don't think that would translate correctly over to the tablet.
In Portrait, it might.
Who the hell uses their tablet in Portrait, really, though?
Kindle type of usage, right? Reading.
Comic books.
Buy a Kindle.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends.
No. You don't count, Renee. You don't count.
iPad. Is when do you ever use it?
You're an iPad user.
Oh, okay.
For a Playbook user to go ahead and use their device in Portrait really doesn't make sense. It's kind of like, why would I do that? It doesn't make sense. It's much more comfortable this way.
Unless I'm playing Popcorny, my favorite Playbook game, and I get to zap popcorn.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite.
I wish I had one called Mitchell-Lucky where I got to zap Kevin.
Build it yourself. You got a dev alpha. Get to it.
Well, so lazy
right now. Kevin's hair.
You're so lazy. Just do it. Focus on the solution, not the problem.
Be like a pair of scissors chasing Kevin's hair, like Pac-Man. Catch the hair.
Now everybody's...
But the only problem is you can never catch it.
Where's Craig?
He disappeared. We're dropping like flies. Yes.
Craig, bye. I don't even know when that happened.
When I was scrambling between you and Blaze trying to make a new shot.
Now everybody's yelling at me about how to use their device in Portrait. So my work here is done.
Okay, wait. What else do we have to talk about? Contest. Hey, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, everybody.
In case you missed it.
You can check out the blog post on the CrackBerry homepage right now. By the time this gets posted, this video, it might be on page 2 or 3. But
got attached to a bunch of iMore posts because we didn't have a title graphic, so Facebook grabbed Kevin's breast cancer awareness graphic and put it on our post.
Sure how that happened, but I apologize. But at least
we got a huge audience. Thanks.
There you go. It helped. We pushed the cracky edge on that, but we didn't try to. We just had a reader send in a photo that she really wanted us to use. So we did.
And Kevin's all about servicing the readership.
And obviously, I mean, I just want the serious part here. I think everybody knows somebody directly or indirectly who's been affected by cancer at this point. I mean, this is the reality of the world, right? So it's not that we're trying to be humorous about something that's serious, but I think it's also awareness is, you got to look on the bright side of life too, right?
You draw attention to the subject.
We absolutely did just that. And it's the internet.
Yes.
This happens. Contests. Adam, what do we have going on? There's a bunch, isn't there?
Yeah, we have the BB10 Believe contest still, I think, where it's actually more so Rims contest, but you can check out that post and you just have to tweet why you believe in BlackBerry 10 with the hashtag BB10Believe. And we're going to give fun stuff away once we hit 10,000 of those. And I think Rim's going to give stuff away. And we also have, which I remembered yesterday, thanks to that little video, the C BlackBerry 10 photo contest. So basically, anytime you spot a 10 of any sort in your daily life, you take a picture of it with your BlackBerry and send it in. And once BlackBerry 10 launches, you can win a device.
There was a snowman contest, but it's over. I made a snowman last Friday. So, yeah. His name was Barry White.
Yeah, your snowman died.
Named by a
I shaved your hair, and then we'll call it a day.
And he melted. All right, I think that's the end of this show, unless there's something else.
That's it.
There's a lot else we could talk about, but we'll leave it. We're gonna do these. How often should we do them, Renee?
Don't say it.
As our executive producer
make broken
podcast
promises.
for Mobile Nations.
Your new broken promise is going to be once every 2 weeks.
Okay, new broken promise once every 2 weeks. And then when BB10 launches, every day.
Every day a new podcast.
Every day. We're just gonna start like while we
can we just do like a nonstop
podcast.
podcast-a-thon, and we just like leave the live feed on all the time, and whoever's around can just jump on and chat.
24 hours.
Done. All right. Okay, guys. Renee, do you want to do the exit stuff? You're so much better at it.
Kevin, where do we find out more about you?
Well, Renee, thanks for asking. You can find me on the Twitter at CrackBerry Kevin. I'm also on this new thing called app.net.
Yep.
Is that what it's called?
Yep. You're at CBK.
I'm at CBK, but I think I'm also at CrackBerry Kevin, and I might have people at both, so I need to consolidate and pick one.
And we're going to have CrackBerry launching there sometime today.
Awesome.
We got
so could you tell everybody listening what that's about? Because some people might not know.
So Twitter decided to be really big jerks and cut off independent developers. It's basically like if you work...
Am I supposed to talk? I can't hear anything.
It's like if you work really hard to put your girlfriend through college and then she becomes a doctor, dumps you, and marries rich. That's what Twitter did to developers. So a bunch of developers went and made...
I think my audio died.
Can we kill Adam?
We can hear you. Yeah, just kill Adam. Adam, bye. Find him.
Oh, I got it now. Once Kevin starts yelling, then I can hear just fine. Sorry.
Yeah, so sorry. So a bunch of developers went and made app.net. It's a paid service, but
you're cutting out. But my name's Adam. I'm a crackaholic. I'm on Twitter and all that good stuff. That's it.
Bye, Adam.
Bye, Adam. Yeah, you can find Kevin at CBK. You'll be able to find CrackBerry at CrackBerry, and all the sites are going to be launched as of today. So you can follow all of Mobile Nations on ADN, sorry. Damn it, Adam. All right, so Kevin, where else can we find you? CrackBerry.com?
I don't know. Google Plus. I'm everywhere now. I'm even on Instagram. You can find me at CrackBerry Kevin because during the Mobile Nations World Tour, I put it on Android and the iPhone. And
nice.
I've sent a few photos.
iCrackBerry Kevin.
What?
It's iCrackBerry Kevin on Instagram.
No, I changed it.
Oh, okay.
It's just CrackBerry Kevin now. I got rid of the I.
You've always wanted to do that.
Yeah, you can do it. Just go onto your profile page. You can change your username.
Blaze, where can we find out more about you?
I am on Twitter at BLA1ZE. You can also find me on CrackBerry. You can catch me on iMore sometimes, and even on Android Central. And after this podcast, you may find me laying in my bed.
Nice. You can find me at Renee Ritchie on both Twitter and ADN. You can also find all of us at CrackBerry. You can email us at podcast@crackberry.com or just leave a comment on the show when it goes live. For all of
What's this ADN thing, Renee? Sorry.
App.net.
So why did you say ADN? I don't know these things.
App.net. It's just a faster way of saying app.
Kevin, you're being
annoying.
Oh
my goodness. But I don't go to ADN.com. I go to app.net.
Alpha.app.net. I'm going to give you a private lesson.
Cutting edge, my friend. Cutting edge.
No, CrackBerry is cutting edge. That's why we are there.
Okay.
For the 3 BlackBerry users on app.net, we want to be there and give them their daily quotient.
Yes.
You can find all of our shows at mobilenations.com/shows. So just go there and Kevin will find you.
Or hunt you down.
Yeah.
All right. Great show, everybody. Let's talk soon. Maybe we'll do a show before Halloween. I really want to not break my promise immediately.
In costume.
And that's it. So we'll catch you soon. This show is going to be called Rusty because we're a little rusty today, and Ranty. So look for episode 91 on video, audio. You're listening to it right now if you're hearing this. What the hell am I even saying this for? That's it. Kevin out.